you'd like to get started, please? I'll give 10 seconds. How's that?
That's great.
Loud enough? Good evening. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board meeting. This is a regularly scheduled meeting here for June 23rd, 2022. Normally we begin with introductions, and I'll start with Dave Pierce.
Dave Pierce, an alternate member.
Jim Raymond.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Gail Brett, alternate and recording secretary.
Philip DeBenza.
Peter Georgantis, Selectman's Rep.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. David, you'll be voting this evening. We are 2 full members short. Okay. First item on the agenda is the minutes of June the 9th. Does anybody have any corrections or changes?
I move we approve.
A second.
Motion to approve by Jim, second by Kimberly. To approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Peter and Phil have both abstained. Motion passes. Second item on an action item is it's a recommendation needed to be forwarded to the ZBA. Joanne, could you please run that quickly for us?
So which one are we at? The
first, the number
Circle
2.
National? Okay. So the Circle National has been operating for a number of years in the same location on Rockland Avenue. They hold, I don't know what you would call it, events, particularly on the weekends. And last year, 2 years ago, they had gone to the selectmen at the beginning of the pandemic, and they had asked to be able to do outdoor bands outside, since most things were being moved outside. And the selectmen approved the event permit. So now they would like to use the property behind them. They're leasing this parcel of land behind them. It's a vacant parcel. And they would like to use that area as well for the outdoor bands. They'd have a bar set up. They have an outdoor liquor license. They'd like to continue to do horseshoes out there, you know, those kinds of things. And so they went and spoke with the town administrator, and he advised them that they would need a variance to do that because they're expanding their use, which is not allowed in the residential zone, because this lot behind them is a split lot. And so,
Split what? Split what and what?
split zone,
What is the zone?
commercial and residential.
Okay, thank you.
So the other issue is, I don't know if it's an issue, but the other, I think I should point it out, is that Lot 3 has no frontage. It's a landlocked parcel. And the only access would either be through the building of the Circle National or through Woodbine Avenue, which is a paper street. So I believe if they're successful in gaining their variance, they also need to apply for a site plan to amend the current site plan that they have, which is from like 1990, as well as getting permission from the select board to use Woodbine. Now there is a letter in the file, excuse me. This is dated 1989, and it says the letterhead is on the Circle National Club's letterhead, and it says, "To whom it may concern. In 1984, the Circle National Club and Therian, the Circle National's northern abutter, were given permission by the Board of Selectmen to utilize Woodbine Street, a paper street, as a parking area. Circle National and Therian then agreed that Circle National would pave, line, and maintain the above-named paper street for function room parking, allowing Therian 24-hour access to their property." Therian had been the roofing company that was abutting that. There's now a different business in there. Recently, they have added a NitPac to that road, but they do need to go back to the selectmen to get permission to use it as an access way. So they are here tonight to see if this board has any comments or recommendations to the Zoning Board of Adjustment concerning the variance.
Thank you, Joanne. Board members, Jim?
I guess the question for us is why, We have an event permit for an occasional event, but this doesn't sound like a occasional event. It seems like
Correct.
a more frequent event.
Yes.
And they're occupying Woodbine Avenue as a part of their usage without site plans. It seems to me they should be coming before us for site plan approval for what seems to be an ongoing activity.
They will be if they're able to, they were directed to first go to the zoning
Okay.
board for the variance and then come here.
So it isn't our comment that from a planning perspective, they need site plan approval, but we're not going to comment on the issuance of a variance. Because it's not our job.
Any other members have an interested statement to make?
I just have a
Peter?
question. On your letter, Joanne, that dated, what, you said 89?
Yes.
It said that this is, like you said, in 84, Circle National Therian then agreed that the Circle National would pave, line, and maintain the above-named paper street. Has that been done?
I don't know what was there before, I just know that NITPAC has been put down recently.
Yeah, but 1984, they said they were going to pave it. That's my question.
It's not paved,
It's
no.
not paved,
No.
okay.
So has that information been confirmed in any minutes from
No.
any select board meeting?
We tried to find it, so this happened somewhere around 1989, and...
Who was, are any of the selectmen still around that were selectmen in
Well,
'89?
that's the thing, the selectmen didn't sign this, it's just signed by Circle National and...
That's why I'm
Therian.
asking, is any selectmen alive that could confirm that in 1989 they remember having that discussion?
I don't know who the selectmen were, do you know?
It says 84.
Oh, excuse me.
Well,
Yeah, it says in 1984, the Circle National Club in Therian.
this was signed in '89, but yes, it happened in '84.
So we have to go back another 5 years to
I
find
don't,
somebody.
I'd
that's-
have to look on the town
not in
report,
West Lawn.
I could
Yeah.
find that out. But if they were, I kind of doubt
The
it.
only one that might be, would be Allard,
Mo?
Wheeler, and that I think would be alive
Johnny would be the other one?
when, what's his name?
Nick?
Nick.
Well, I think it'd be worth the effort to try to confirm the information is correct, that's all. That's just for the variance, not for us.
Nice,
I'm just thinking this seems a little silly. If we don't have an official record in the town's official records, why do we need to go chasing people down for their memory banks?
I don't know.
I
Dave?
agree. We shouldn't be relying on someone's memory from 25, 30 years ago.
I don't remember
If it's not
1989,
part of the official record.
Well,
Me
then that's for the ZBA to consider, not us.
But the question is, who owns Woodbine?
The town,
So they're using town property.
correct.
That's why I'm trying to
They-
ask the ZBA to confirm that
They're
that's
saying they
incorrect.
have permission, but it's for parking along their building. It's not to access someone else's land, which,
The abutter to Woodbine uses Woodbine to access the rear of their facility.
they do, and they don't have permission either, and they're coming in for a site plan shortly. We had a meeting with them recently about the
It
same
sounds like
thing.
there are a lot of interesting planning and zoning issues
Yeah.
involved in this.
All right. So the question here is, do we have comment for the zoning board of adjustment? Jim has made a statement, and does the board concur with Jim's statement that we should send on Jim's statement? We have to vote on whether we're going to accept that as a board decision.
Remind me what that statement was.
Jim, could you please?
Well,
give
that
a-
they need to come before this board as site plan approval,
Right.
and that we're not going to comment on the eligibility for a variance or the remedy before the ZBA.
So we'll take a straw poll on that, Dave. Do you concur with Jim's statement?
Yes.
Karen, did you hear enough of it to concur or not?
No, I'm going to abstain. I concur, yeah.
I concur. Phil?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Peter?
I'm going to abstain because this could come before the Board of Selectmen in the future.
So Joanne, could you please make our official comment to the zoning board of adjustment that should they grant a variance, that we would need to see them for a site plan review?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item is another action item regarding a recommendation to the ZBA variance. Do you want me to read it, Joanne, or you want to take care of it?
Let me just
Because I know you're writing.
catch up to where you are. You can go ahead.
So the recommendation has been requested to be forwarded to the ZBA for a variance request to allow the construction of a 4,800 square foot office retail and maintenance shop with outdoor display areas on a lot that does not have the 50-foot of road frontage as required. 186 North Mass Road, map 5, lot 49, Hawks Motorsports. It's the lot that's 2 lots to the right of the car wash that's presently being built. And the reason they don't have the frontage is because the rail trail separates their property from the Route 114 corridor.
That is correct.
I'm going to make the same suggestion. We have granted site plan approval for other properties subject to their obtaining variances, and we would expect that this application would come before us for site plan approval if the variance is granted.
Any other board members?
Joanne, is this scheduled?
Not
for the
yet.
ZBA?
Oh, it is scheduled for the next CBA meeting, which is, I believe it's July 5th. It's not yet scheduled for planning.
So Jim has made a second statement that should the ZBA approve this request for the lot that does not have the proper frontage, that they would be required to come before the planning board for a site plan review. Does anybody, everybody's nodding their head, we don't need to have a straw poll?
Yeah.
Bill?
No, okay.
Okay, so the same comment would go to the ZBA for the second request as well.
Okay. I got it.
Okay.
And I think, as a general matter, Joanne, I don't think we should be having hearings on these because they're not noticed. And
So you don't want anyone here?
no, I
Okay.
no, I
That's
think
fine.
our comments are going to be limited because we're not still on the feet of the CBA.
Okay, that's
And I
fine.
also think that our past practice has been very, very, almost never making recommendations. We generally make no recommendations, as I recall, in the past. We don't,
I think it's to alert them to particular planning issues that we need to be concerned about.
Okay.
In this case, I don't think there is any.
anybody else have, sorry, Jim, didn't mean to cut you. Anybody else have any other comments regarding either of these ZBA recommendation requests? Okay, so we go on to old business. This was continued from May 26th, map 14, lot 11, a conditional use permit and subdivision review hearing. Joanne?
Okay, so the applicant was here on May 26th. At that time, the board found the plan to be complete with no regional impact. The public hearing was opened and held. There were several comments from the staff which the applicant has addressed, and they did go back out there and measure the distance between the driveway for lot 1411, well, the driveway is actually for 1411-1, but between lots 1411 and 1412-2, and it turns out that they have 39.26 linear feet versus the 40 that's required, so they do need a conditional use permit. They have attached in your packet, you will find a letter from T.F. Moran dated 6/8/22 addressing the criteria, so that will need to be voted on. They did request a waiver at the May meeting for the need for the 45 by 90 turnaround for fire department, and the board found it wasn't needed, so that waiver was approved. The comments under DPW are basically, there's a few outstanding things that need to be addressed, but most of them are just the standard comments that we would attach to a subdivision. And there is one comment that I know that you probably remember the conversation about the trees along the property line between 1412-2, which is an existing abutter, to the new driveway. And they were asked to add the row of trees that abut the new driveway from the existing lot. And they did do that, and I had put a recommendation that there's a note added to the plan about that those trees should stay there, or not that the trees should stay there, but there should always be trees there in perpetuity. And David reviewed these plans and has some comments that he can say what they are himself, which kind of cleans up my recommendation. That's really all we have at this point with this one. Scott, did you have anything? Did you have anything else? Okay.
Are you set, Joanne?
Scott may want to speak if you want to hear from him.
Not yet.
Okay.
Board members for Joanne, questions for Joanne first.
When it's ready, I have a revision for condition 17, and I'll also propose condition 18 and 19.
Okay,
To get that, to those.
when we get to that point, I'll entertain that. Jim, did you have something?
Some of the wording on the conditions of approval needs to be changed.
Can we review them at the end?
Yeah, I just want to
Fine.
alert you that it's.
So both you and David both have some conditions of approval items to deal with.
Correct.
Okay.
On my clarification, proper wording.
Okay? Anything relevant to the application that we're going to discuss? Seeing none, Scott, would you like to come up and identify yourself for the record and be heard? Or not?
Scott Azana, town engineer. So I really had very little left in terms of comments. One of them is pretty simple. There's a errant graduation on the scale. It's like a 10-foot tick that doesn't make sense, and I think, Dave, that's where you and I had a dispute last time about that. That should be, I don't think it needs a number there, but it would be the 12.5. So we asked that the existing water service to lot 1411 be shown on the plan, and that wasn't added. Mike, I can send you the tie card if you'd like, if you're having issues with locating it. Okay, so I'll send you the tie card.
Scott, I'll just ask you not to talk to him.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Talk to us, and he'll come up and talk after.
Okay.
We don't go back and forth.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
And other than that, they're all just standard conditions. As for the driveway waiver or conditional use permit, where it's so close to 40, DPW doesn't see a major issue with it. I would say there'll be 3 driveways on the east side, 2 driveways in Ivy Lane on the west side, all within about 200 feet of each other. It's a pretty slow, flat road. I don't see a sight distance issue with anything, so no major comment there from DPW.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Scott from board members?
I just,
Bill?
one question. The water service up here, is it all Manchester Waterworks public, not private? The reason why I ask is up in this area behind here, we have some of them that have private, and when they extend and they build, people assume that look at the property, they assume that they go to Manchester Waterworks
Okay.
to get a hookup, and when they go, they find out, well, that's a private line. You gotta get a hold of the owners in the neighborhood
Okay.
and work with them, and it causes issues.
Yeah.
They come to the selectmen, they go to Public Works, and just so that there are records that it's a private line, and confirm that it is Manchester Water.
Okay, yeah, I don't know the answer.
Oh,
to
I'm
that,
just-
sorry, yeah.
It's issues that have come up in the past.
Okay,
Phil, this water line is coming in off of St. Anselm Drive.
yeah.
Right, I kind of assume that it is, but I don't
It's shown as it's also shown as a 12-inch cast iron water main.
Okay,
which
well,
is highly unlikely
This,
to be
this
private.
is, this, I wasn't here at the other
I
meeting when
wasn't
this
either,
came,
but I
and
just
I
read it.
looked at this, and it was just a concern I'll bring forward, just so that people are aware, especially in this area of town, there are private water
Okay.
lines.
All right, it's good
Thank
to
you.
know. I'll look into it. The fact that I found the water tie card the other day makes me think that it's probably.
And I assume, because I'm familiar with this portion of Heald,
Mhm.
portion of Heald, as it was mentioned with St. A's is all Manchester water.
Okay.
A good chance it probably is, but when you go further down, when you go up the other streets, some of them become private lines.
Okay, good to know. I will look into it.
Before we go any further, David, I'm going to let Barbara step up because she is a board member, so David, you will not be voting on this application. Okay. So there's no more questions for Scott? Seeing none, I'll ask you to step down, Scott, and I'll ask the applicants to come up, identify themselves, and speak.
Mike Dahlberg, T.F. Moran, and my partner in crime, Joe Bushman, is the owner. That is Manchester Waterworks on Hill Street. We have we got the sheet from Manchester Waterworks, and apparently the water service for 3 Hill comes off of St. A's Drive. That's why they couldn't find us a tie card. So. And we have no issues with what Scott talked about or anything that was mentioned in Joanne's letter and comments.
I wasn't here for the last meeting, Mike, when you first discussed this. Can you tell me, and you probably already told the board, do you have available frontage on St. A's to access this site, or are you
Well,
not able?
we do have available frontage for both lots in St. Anselm's Drive. We just felt that coming off of Heald Street, protected that front yard appeal.
I see. I just was asking why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And while those trees that are there between lot 12-2 and 11-2, proposed 11-2, well, there are trees, we planted them. I don't know.
12-2 and 11-2? Okay, yeah, okay.
I'm not sure about perpetuity,
I will address it.
but we have no intention of tearing them down. We don't need to. The water line and the sewer line can both go under the driveway on the other side of the driveway. I just showed it there for reference. And the well, the dug well, I believe it was supposed to be filled in today per the state spec sheet requirements. And other than that, I don't really have a lot to add, other than I have a question for clarification in zoning on, it talks about corner lots front setback. And I'm not sure if this is a conflict in the ordinance or not, but under 4.2.2, it says where a lot is a corner lot or otherwise has multiple street frontages, front dimensions shall be observed adjacent to one of the frontages. So the way I interpret that is that the Heald Street lot, where the existing house is, we can have the 25-foot front side yard, and the St. A's Drive side could be a side yard setback of 15 feet. Now, we show the setbacks here per Joanne's comments, but then I was looking at the dimensional table 4.3, and then I went to the page before, because I knew I had read in the past something about corner lot setbacks. Some towns require double front setbacks, which is fine, but you have 4.2.2, and I'm just looking for the board's input on that. But it said, the ordinance, it says where there's multiple frontages.
So is that in relation to the new proposed lot, Mike, or the existing lot?
Existing lot.
Existing lot, the corner lot.
And actually, it applies to both lots, because it says lots with two frontages. It doesn't say corner lot.
I'm not the expert on this, somebody
I
else.
think it's sloppy wording on our ordinance. I'm not surprised to find that. It's a lot of this. I'm shocked. So I think the reasonable interpretation here is that the primary frontage is on St. Anselm's Drive, and that should be where the setback is measured to serve the intent of the ordinance.
Anybody else have an opinion on that?
Well, I just ask, just throw
Go
this
right
out.
ahead.
I mean, you have, what is the address of the corner lot?
3 Heald.
What are we talking about, the new lot or the existing?
The existing lot.
Does it matter?
Well, isn't that what you?
Why does it matter? It's grandfathered.
Well, not when we do the subdivision, now that lot has to comply with the zoning.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Thank you, Mike. So the line that you've superimposed through the middle of the house and the garage is what you're presuming to be the setback lines, Mike?
Yes, because that's the lot's frontage, that's the street address, is 3 Heald.
At 3 Heel Street.
Correct. So I'm wondering, I think, the way I read the ordinance as it's written today, that for the corner lot, we could have a 15-foot setback off of St. A's Drive.
Okay.
That's right.
So I would like to properly show that on the plan.
But it exceeds it right now. You have
It
it
does. I
you have
have
it set
20.
at 10, right?
I have 25,
Which lot are we talking about,
the
Mike?
corner lot,
What's the corner lot? The new lot or the old lot?
the old lot,
14-11.
Well,
That's
the
what
one
I
with the
think.
existing house.
Who's that first?
so Mike, it's odd to me because the setback line on 1411 appears to be much closer to St. A's Drive than the
Right.
one you show on 1411-2 and marked as 25. They don't look like they're the same distance from St. A's Drive.
I don't think you have the most recent plan.
Well, then I
I-
guess we don't.
Yeah, because I agree with Tim. I'm looking at a lesser setback to St. Abe's than
Would
the
you like
one
to see our
in here.
plans?
Would
This
you
is
like to see
dated
my
April
plans?
25th. April 25th?
June 8th is the date.
That was
No.
the received date.
Oh, that's right.
The
April's
revision
25th.
date is 6/7/22.
Whoops.
Oops.
Mine says 5/7/22.
We don't have that. I'm looking at 5/4/25.
I got April 25th on mine.
This one is
No,
5/27/22.
the revision block is in the lower left-hand corner, and there should be a,
6/7/22.
So what happened to your
Yeah. okay.
submittal on the
left. I'm looking at the
revision
right.
sheet?
We're looking at the one on the
Yeah, no,
table.
look over here.
I don't believe we ever received
Yours
anything.
is revised to
Yeah,
6/7, right?
But that's not the latest
Yeah, that's the one we
That's
have.
what he's saying.
Are we all on the same
No, on
plan?
page two.
Oh, you're on the little plan. I'm looking at the big plan.
Yeah, we're all looking at the big one.
No,
big
look-
plan-
Well, they're both the
Look on,
same.
look on sheet 2.
Page
It has the revised to sheet 2.
That has a 6/7.
Oh.
It does.
I was
Well,
looking
thank
at
you for that
because-
clarification. I'll get this
Sheet 2 is
The
the
setback is
topo.
still the
Here's
issue.
what
Sheet
plan-
2 is
what
the
this plan
topo
is.
plan, but we need to have the revised sheet for the actual subdivision
Okay,
plan.
but the point is, sheet 2
setbacks are the
shows
same.
what
The
we're
setbacks
trying
are
to
the same.
talk about.
I know
So
that,
for
but-
purposes of our discussion,
Okay.
we can go, because presumably they didn't put the update the revised 2 block on sheet 1, but that's, we can correct that, so.
So I'm guessing that we have a 6/7/22 revision, Mike? Is that the latest revision for you, 6/7?
I think someone took an old copy of,
That's what we're looking at.
Because our 6/7/22 revision still shows the lot line on the parent lot
The
closer
setback, yeah.
than the other
The
one.
topo plan.
It's a 6/7.
Now, are we supposed to go to the small plan set to come up
No,
with the...
just
No, it's the same.
go to sheet, go to sheet 2.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
That has the correct revision date. which did not get copied over to sheet 1.
Which is okay, it's just a deed.
Okay. So I think that for lot 1411, where the existing one-story wood frame house is, based on my interpretation of the ordinance, that 25-foot setback
Along St. Anselm.
along St. Anselm Drive should be 15.
That's what you showed. You showed 15.
And that's what I showed before Joanne asked me to make it 25.
I am very confused because the setback line on the St. A side looks and measures by my pen, admittedly not a tool, to be smaller than the setback on Heald Street.
I think I remember.
I have no idea what plans you're looking at.
Well, that's not
Can I just get
helping.
up and see it?
1442.
You don't, that's the old plan. That's what I want it to look like. This is what it
No,
looks
we're
like.
not, I don't see that.
This is 10.
Like, so
Are we-
you were ahead of the game before you let me know.
25, 25.
So-
It's the same.
The plans were hand carried.
So before we go any farther, everyone, is it my memory correct, but when we always had corner lots that we always had the two street sides always had to be the same frontage? No?
I don't think so. That's
The-
not what,
Yes.
that's not what our ordinance requires.
Yeah,
That's what
it
the zoning
does.
ordinance, that's what we've always enforced.
The zoning ordinance
And
says
the
that.
zoning, yeah.
But I'm looking at page 42 of the zoning ordinance.
So am I.
4.2.2 corner lot front setback. And that's, so is there a side setback requirement for a corner lot somewhere that says it's, has to be?
So the
same?
other two lot lines would be required to have the side setback
When a corner
lines.
lot is a corner lot, or otherwise has multiple street frontages, front dimension shall be observed adjacent to one of the frontages. So I recall from the past, and maybe the distant past, they were able to, the applicant was able to choose the frontage, and we did not require the same setback from both roads, rightly or wrongly.
That's
was
my
the way-
recollection.
How we did it, and that's what
Okay.
that wording says.
Just,
The issue here, though, from Mike's comment on 14-11, is he has, if he does it this way, the house is going to be non-conforming. It will be grandfathered, but to the extent they ever want to make any changes to it, and the 25-foot frontage is along Hill Street, they won't be able to expand the non-conformity. So I would think you would want to do it the other way, so that that house is not conforming.
yeah, but you can't call St. A's Drive the frontage when your house faces Heald Street and that's where your driveway is and that's where your front
All
door
we're
is.
reading is the zoning ordinance, which controls us if we want to.
So they could come in and say that my frontage is St. Anselm Drive even though it's the side of my house?
Yeah, because
Okay.
we don't determine the face of the house as defining frontage under our ordinance. Should we? Maybe,
And-
but we don't.
Typically, the way the fire departments look at it, it's typically the driveway, which usually is the front, but not always. But
But that's for a different
it's not in,
purpose.
you're correct, it's
Yeah,
not
it
in
was.
here. And then in, under 4.3, it says, side street, same, this is for minimum setback requirements. Side street, same as front street on corner lot.
Okay, so that's, if that's the
Okay.
case, then that's
There's
4.3.
conflict.
The dimensional table, correct.
Yeah, the dimensional. Well, the dimensional table, I think, might say something
Well,
else.
sorry, I'm calling that page that you're on right now the dimensional
Let's-
table.
So Jim,
Yes, this is, you're right.
do we not assume that when a 911 address is assigned to a home, that's considered the front of the home?
No, that's not a zoning matter.
Yeah, it's for fire protection.
We don't
Can I-
even know when
can I
that
help?
happens.
When what happens? They get
When the
the,
address for 911, we don't.
so they receive the address after it's been
Right,
through
through us.
everyone's approval, and then the fire department assigns the address as part of the building process.
Right, and we assume that we see a driveway in a subdivision, that will govern the address, but we don't set the address.
No, no.
So where are you reading on the side setback?
On the far right in the notes, under the R2 zone.
It's on
Under all
page
the-
43. And then you look under the top headings, the one that says minimum setback requirements.
And which column are we looking at? The one that says feet?
Correct. Minimum, the column is
And
minimum.
which zone is this one classified as?
R2.
Okay, no, that's,
Side street, same as front street on corner lot.
So what Mike was trying to say was, he drew it on this most recent rendition to be 25 on both sides,
I see.
but his opinion based on section
4.2.2.
4.2.2 is that there's a conflict in the book. And
Okay.
so which one did you want to go with? Mike's thought was that the along St. Anselm should be 15 and along Heald should be 25. But
Well, I think if we use our table, which is where it's explained clearly, we would use the table as our reference. If you wanna maintain 15 feet, you'd have to ask for a waiver of something for the sideline setbacks.
just to be fair again, that section reads, if you have frontage on two streets, one street will have a front setback. So they're conflicting.
Well, that's poorly
completely.
worded, so, and it's pretty clearly worded in the table, under the high-density residential R2, where all the rest of the pertinent information is. It's explained very clearly in that table.
I don't find the other section poorly worded myself personally, but,
Well, because it benefits you.
well, there's no real benefit.
Sorry, Joe.
25
Well, there's a point, there's a conflict though.
yeah.
So what do we do when there's a conflict?
Well,
So
I-
we decide which side of the road we
No,
wanna drive on.
No, we don't. We're bound by our ordinance. And if we have a sloppily worded ordinance, shame on us. But we do have a provision that if there's a conflict in provisions, the more strict applies. And using that rule, then the rule in the table as the more strict would apply. It's not because we like it better, but it's because that's what the ordinance provides, because that's what we're bound by. We don't have the authority to rewrite our ordinance and make people drive on the other side of the street.
Not today.
So if that rule applies, then. I
Does
think-
that only apply to multifamily dwellings? Because there's a 4 after minimum setback requirements, which push you to the bottom of the page for multifamily dwellings. It says, section 4.4 for minimum side and rear yard setbacks. I don't think that applies to single family. I think that's for multifamily only.
I think what that means is if you have multifamily, then you have to refer to section 4.4, which is the next section down. Like it's a whole new section.
Well,
Does it matter if we put 25?
no, you just tell me what you want me to do.
I've had that feeling. Just whatever.
Well, but either way, I mean, it's still 25, right? So we're creating a law that's not conforming.
Honestly, I think if I show it as 25 and I say refer to zoning section 4, if someone goes in, they tear that building down and come in for a building permit, it's gotta go through code enforcement and we'll get a zoning opinion from them. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
We don't have any code enforcement anymore.
You will.
Why, you taking the job, Mike?
No, there's someone's gonna have to make that decision.
I move that we request that the applicant use the standard on page 43, require the applicant to, on the side streets and corner lots in this district.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
So you made a motion to require that we use the table on page 43 that says the side street is same as the front street on a corner lot. Is that what your motion is?
It is on, it's the more restrictive.
And I'll
yeah,
second it.
It's the more restrictive provision.
So the motion is to apply the table on page 43, standard 2525 made by Jim, seconded by Karen. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Okay.
Getting through that major issue.
Well, I don't have anything else.
So, before we move on, so Joanne, did I hear correctly that all the requests for changes made by the board and by Public Works have been accomplished before this meeting?
Yes, other than the ones listed as a condition of
Okay.
approval,
Jim?
but
I'm gonna request that we have the applicant request that the statement on the conditional use permit be entered into the record and we waive his having to read it to us.
So moved.
You can't make motions.
See, Jim's moving right along. Waive reading. So his request has been made and the board is voting.
And I'm referring to the letter dated 6/8/22 to the,
So all those in favor of the applicant's request to waive the reading of the conditional use permit, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, passes. All right. So now we're gonna talk about the conditional use permit. Public Works has endorsed it. They see no problem with it. Board members.
I think we want to get comment from the audience before
We will. I'm asking for board members for comments.
oh, yeah.
I think I'd like to hear from the audience before.
Oh, you don't want to? Okay. Guys,
We could be bringing more information and you'll have more questions.
I didn't ask for a vote, I asked for discussion. Okay, we open the public hearing at this time. Anybody who'd like to be heard on this application, please come forward, state your name, and tell us what you'd like to say. Hi.
Good evening. My name's Emmanuel Manjanis. I live at 10 Hill Street, which is the property right across from the driveway that's being discussed. Last time I looked from where that driveway is going to be, looking at my house, it looks like headlights coming out of the driveway are going to go into my first floor bedroom area and also my dining room area. So I just want to let everybody know that that's what's going to happen if that driveway ends up coming onto Hill Street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? The other gentleman in the back there, you good?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, thank you. All right, since there's no one else here to speak on the public hearing, I will close the public hearing. Now I'll open up to the board for discussion.
I'd like to talk about that last point. We're concerned about headlight glare when we line up driveways. And the house location of Mr. Martinez is not shown on this plan, so I don't assess his statement other than take it as face value. Typically requested the applicant to make an accommodation for that. Which I think is fair, because we want to protect the existing properties in the neighborhood.
And there's another access available to them if they wanted to use it.
There is.
Any other board members wish to be heard on this matter? Barbara?
Well, I think Jim is correct. We usually ask applicants to make accommodations when there's light impact on other lots. It is hard to tell what's going on, or what is even there now, as far as what could be done to shield headlight. I can't say we're always successful in trying to shield abutting properties from headlights, but we try. So I don't know what might be done. Because it's obviously a nice big lot on the corner of Heald and Ivy, and I have no idea where the driveway of the house really is, so.
Mr. Chair?
David?
It's my observation, having visited the property, that the driveway is essentially at the same elevation as the road. It's all on the same plane. The driveway is not sloping up or down, it's the same elevation as the road.
Anybody else on the board want to make a comment?
But in response, it's the issue of the headlights of cars driving out of the driveway into the other lot. So, not cars driving by, so I don't think
It's people that are going to be leaving this site if the driveway is approved in its proposed location. It's what Mr. Manjanis was speaking about. So if no other board members have anything to say, I'll ask the applicants to come up and address this comment, see what they have to say.
I understand where he's coming from, but what about all the people that live on Ivy Street that come up St. A's Drive and turn, and all their headlights go into his house?
Do you see any reasonable accommodation from your end, gentlemen?
I don't know how we could mitigate what's already occurring, and I don't...
We're not
think-
talking about present conditions, Mike, we're talking about this driveway. So do you have any
Not
suggestions?
on our property, I don't see it.
No mitigation.
Not on our property.
Is your driveway presently 10 feet from the lot line like the ordinance requires?
You mean how it's drawn?
Yes.
It's just under 14 feet from each side.
Is there a way to change the angle of approach at Heel Street that would have the headlights sort of facing, like put a little sweep at the end or something? Is that something you could consider?
I just don't think there's enough room, to be honest.
Can I ask a question?
Karen?
We can try.
Well, they're speaking right now, Karen. Let them speak.
We can try.
I'm just thinking of a reasonable accommodation, Mike. Okay, I'm gonna let Karen speak because she wants to speak.
I'm just wondering the purpose of, and I think you touched upon this briefly earlier, so I apologize for not recalling, but what was the purpose of having the driveway go onto Heel Street as opposed to St. Anselm Drive?
To preserve the aesthetic, that's all open area and nice stone wall and on the new lot, and to not have a driveway come off St. Anne's Drive.
I may just add to that.
Please.
The applicant pointed out at the last hearing that if you also have small children riding their bikes, you might want them to ride out to Hill Street rather than St. Anselm, so there's a safety issue on using that as
I might presume something here because I see the sewer line does not extend up to that point on that lot, so you would not be able to tie into the sewer, which you haven't mentioned yet. You need to be exiting Heel Street to access the public sewer.
Well, we need to have frontage on, we need to have a strip to...
I'm just saying.
We have to have, well, we don't have to have a driveway there, but
Right, you just need to have.
we just need to have a strip.
You could access it through a right-of-way over to Heel Street. Or a piece of land you own, not a right-of-way, a piece of land you would own. You could reduce that, you could narrow that for sewer and water access, bring your sewer and water in there, and still have a driveway on St. A's Drive, theoretically.
It could be done. I don't think it would be as safe, but it could be done.
Yeah, I don't want to, there's a way not to compel them to have driveways under St. A's drives and much nicer residential
I'm not
property.
compelling the thing, we're talking about reasonable
Yeah.
accommodations for
Well,
the headlight wash on the neighbor's home.
Yeah.
Realistically, how many people are gonna be coming and going at night?
Depends on what's built there.
The typical residential property.
Well, is this in a two-family zone, Mike? Is this
It
in a
is.
multi-family zone?
The most you could have on the new lot would be a two-family,
Okay.
And on the old lot?
just a one.
You couldn't have a two-family deal?
On the old lot,
Yeah.
no. You need a half acre now in the R2 zone to have a two-family. But you only need 10,000 square feet to have a single. Since we added that graduated scale.
Tim,
Yes, Joanne, I'm sorry, not, I saw you had your hand up, I was thinking.
is it possible for the applicant to work with the abutter and possibly add either a berm or some landscaping, taller bushes or something that would block those headlights?
Well, Mike didn't propose that, so I'm not gonna put him up to it.
On our property, I don't see a good way to
No.
solve it. on
On
their
their
property,
property.
I'd be happy to give them a $500 stipend or budget, or $500 to plant trees, put a fence. I'd be happy to do that.
Won't go very far.
A couple of rose bushes, that's about it nowadays.
I appreciate the offer, Joe, but we're discussing this here. All right, board members.
Joan, what's the setback
You would work with
of the
somehow.
driveway have to be from the sidelines of that?
10 feet.
10 feet from the
And how
property.
wide is it now?
The driveway is 39.26.
Yeah,
The
the
opening.
driveway
That's
itself,
the
Oh,
opening.
the opening,
the
I'm
driveway
sorry.
itself is 12 feet wide,
And it's a 40-foot area that it's in,
yes.
Yeah,
or 39 point something.
.26. So there's 13.7 feet on either side.
And this is residential only, correct?
This is residential too.
Okay.
Well, that gives you a little bit of room if you didn't do a straight-in driveway. You had enough to.
You could angle it a little bit.
Over the length of that driveway.
The only problem with putting an angled driveway in, you do not have access from the other side of the driveway. It creates a hairpin turn to get in. And we want driveways to be accessible from the left and right side of the property.
Got a hairpin turn.
Because otherwise it becomes like the in driveway that goes into the housing behind the Rite Aid right now. It's made sweeping for people to only be able to make one angle to get into it. So that's, I don't think that's fair to force that on.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, David, I'm sorry for not looking up.
I know I'm not a voting member, but my
You're just-
comment is that I would be uncomfortable mandating any change other than what's being shown here, unless the abutter's house is shown. The presentation is that the driveway is directly towards the front of their house, but I'm uncomfortable not seeing the house plotted here.
Okay?
And therefore, I would urge the board to not make an accommodation.
I'm not sure what
Bill?
that meant.
Well, that brings up a different point. If the house was shown on here and it wasn't in that area, then it would prove that this did not affect the house. But the person who made the plan had the opportunity to put the house on and chose not to put it on.
Jim?
The only evidence before us of the house location is offered by the owner of the house and is not rebutted by any other. So that is, I think we're entitled to rely on that.
Thank you.
What does the board want to do with this tonight?
I think the accommodation would be the planting, if that's feasible or something, because I think, in my mind, this is the best location for the driveway, not to compel it to be on St. Anselm's. But we want to have some accommodation to the abutter. I question whether $500 gets us very far. It is.
Well, first of all, I think if we come to this conclusion, I think it should be installed by the applicant and not just give someone money. And we should also,
Can we do
I
that?
think we should ask I hate to do this because I don't want to bring public comment back up, but we have to get input from the abutter, if that's going to be acceptable with the abutter. We did that when we talked about the YMCA headlight wash on the neighbors across the street. They had a chance to speak to the issue.
Sure it's nuts, but yes.
Well,
No, you're right.
fair is fair.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
Well, we also, again, when
Please.
we were discussing the plans for the laundromat, didn't we deal with the abutters' concerns and moved driveways and did other things to
Yeah.
deal with the headlight wash?
Yeah, we did.
Just have the
Peter,
question
please.
of driveway coming off St. A's, the major item is safety or the aesthetics?
I think safety.
Well, last time they said the former, safety, whichever, and today he's.
Who stated it, the applicant,
Yeah.
Rummerly? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, when first, last time it came out.
And I think the board agreed with that.
No, I'm just curious, I mean, it's just,
You think the board
Solve
agreed
a
with
lot of
that,
problems
Joanne?
by
Why,
moving
because
it.
they didn't question it?
Oh, no.
No,
I-
they
I-
discussed
I
it a
agree with
little
it,
bit.
yeah.
You think it's unsafe to have a driveway
I
on
think,
St.
I
A's
think it's
Drive?
more safe for your kids on the bikes to ride out into Hill Street than
Well,
to St. A's.
can I say something?
Please, Barbara.
I can recall being on different boards where people complained about the street being safe for their basketball hoop, that they would move out into the street. So there are rules for riding bikes on the street, and if we start to sort of make these accommodations, and I'm not saying the kids shouldn't be able to play in the street, because we should all be paying attention and it shouldn't matter, but I'm sorry, I'm not buying that my kid is in the driveway and it's easier for my kid to drive onto a less busy street than a more busy street. That's not a consideration for me. If you're gonna say aesthetics, that's one thing, but I think the applicant chooses to go off of St. A's and, you know, a driveway in and out of a less busy street, and I'm not doing a traffic study, but based on observation, I would guess Heald Street is less busy than St. A's. I think a driveway is safer from that perspective, but there's certainly nothing that approaches any prohibition on putting a new driveway cut on St. A's. So if the applicant chooses to go off of Heald Street for whatever reason, and I appreciate that, there are offsets to that. And if it's across from a house and there needs to be accommodation for headlight wash, that's the choice.
I think there would also have to be something where we are happy with the sight distance, that they've met the sight distance there, because right near that area is when it starts to dip down, and I'm not sure what the sight distance is at all.
Which road are you talking about?
St. A's.
If they were to access St. A's.
Is our consensus then that there has to be an accommodation by something on the abutters lot if the abutter would approve of that? We can't compel them to accept it. And as we've done before.
my only thing, I just wanted to make sure they had a really good excuse for not doing off of St. A's Drive. And one of the things was the safety of some kid on a bicycles entering St. A's Drive, whereas there's a proposed driveway, they could always put a walkway to Heald Street. I mean, there's lots of ways that they're concerned about that they could take care of that. You know,
That's fair.
so
Yeah, of course, I don't know what's on the other side of St. A's, probably somebody else's house, but.
So, board members, would anybody object to me asking the applicant, Mr. Mandanis, to come up and respond to the suggestions, or is that improper?
No, we can.
Can we request an applicant to put, like some sort of accommodation on another person's property?
Yes, we've done it. We did it at the YMCA. But the
No, the
applicant.
YMCA
Yeah,
was
it's the YMCA
property,
property.
yeah.
Yeah, and we allowed the applicant and the abutter to enter into a private agreement. We
Yeah,
did not,
yeah,
we did not get involved, other than the applicant was willing to assist with screening. At that point, we turned it over to the applicant and the abutter, and we allowed them to work it out. We did not mandate the size of the tree or the placement of the tree or anything, as my memory serves me correct.
I think
I
we
don't
did
think
the
so.
size.
I think so.
I think
It
we
was a
did
little
the
more
size,
detailed than
yeah.
that.
I was really
Yeah, it was more
involved with that
detailed.
one.
But I
Well,
do,
I really do think you're not, because the folks on the left side across from the driveway.
I don't want to relive this. It's traumatic.
I don't want to relive it either, but I'm remembering that we had no involvement in it. We let them enter into an agreement
well,
between themselves.
are we talking about the back of the YMCA or the front?
Some of us have different
There was two,
recollections of
yeah.
things, so it's not
All right,
unusual.
at this
Let's get
point,
back to this one.
at this point,
Please.
Mr. Manjanis, would you like to come up to the table again, sir? So you've been listening, and we are listening to your comment about headlight wash, and we are discussing mitigation. One of the items of possible mitigation was some plantings on your land that would screen headlight wash from going on to your property and onto your home. Is that something that you concur with, or do you disagree with that?
I concur.
Okay. And would you be willing, if we reach an agreement for this applicant to make an agreement with you, that you two folks would work it out and we would stay out of it, that you would be in agreement to work with them on the screening issue to some sort of reasonable conclusion?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, sir. It's on the record, right?
Well, we're recording.
Now, it's time for Ask Mike and Joe to come back up.
I'll let Joe come up.
If Joe would like to,
Mike said enough.
if Joe agrees
Just
to
Joe's the one that
work with
does the
Mr. Manjanis independently, then you guys need to come to some sort of an agreement before we'll sign the plans.
I think the only thing that I'd like to add is, number one is if the driveway were to be moved to St. Anselm's, I'm sure there's somebody on the other side of St. Anselm's.
Actually, it would come out looking like on a property line almost,
Right.
somewhere along the property line, because that property line across the street hits the dead center of your frontage on St. A's.
Still gonna have headlight wash.
And then the second thing would be, I really would not want to go onto the abutter's property. I'd be happy to make a monetary compensation, but I don't want to be on the property doing work.
That's fair.
Fair?
I'd be willing to say tonight
Fair.
that, I know you didn't like the 500, so I'll say it's as 1,000.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I mean, come up with some number, that sounds good.
Well, I don't know if it's up to us to determine the amount.
Well, I think it,
I don't think 1,000 will
I,
get very far.
I think it's for us to define what we're expecting as a reasonable accommodation, not a $20,000 landscaping job.
No, exactly. I mean,
So
not knowing the circumstances.
I'm going to move as to this issue that we accept the offer by the applicant to find an agreement with the abutter, Mr. Manjanis, spending up to $1,000 for reasonable planting or other accommodation to address the headlight wash problem.
Why are we saying up to 1,000 though?
Because that's what he's offered. And I think that's a reasonable amount.
And Jim, I think when you stated it, I think it needs to be made clear that the applicant is going to provide the neighbor with the funds. He is not going to go on the land and do the
correct,
planting.
correct.
I didn't know if that was clear.
Oh,
in
I'm
your
sorry,
motion.
to the extent it wasn't, that can add to my
Joe?
motion.
Just from contracts, I just want to know, I'm going to give him 1,000, not up to 1,000,
Right.
just
that's what
1,000.
Karen-
That's
Yeah.
up to 1,000, yeah. Okay.
So I'm looking for a nod from the back of the room. Is that going to be acceptable to you, Mr. Manjanis?
Well,
Come on up to, if you're going to speak, come up to the table, please, so we can hear you. And be on the microphone, sir.
I would suggest the gentleman that wants to do the driveway and myself, if we go to a landscape or someplace that you people recommend.
No, we don't make recommendations.
Okay.
It's between you two.
Yep. And then we figure out what type of bush, shrub that
Yep.
we can put there, and then go from there.
And then he's going to provide you with $1,000 to pay for the plantings. And if the nursery can put them in within that budgetary amount, that'll be your limit that you'll have to spend from the applicant.
Okay?
But what if it's,
Instead of saying up to $1,000.
He said it was gonna be 1,000. He said it clearly.
Jim did not.
No, he did
I'll
not.
amend my motion.
Well, the motion, we're
But-
trying to find a
That's fine, no.
consensus here.
The applicant, amend my motion, so the applicant will contribute to the abutter. He can decide how to treat it for tax purposes, $1,000 for an appropriate screening.
That satisfy you, Barbara?
Thank you. Let's be clear, at least in my mind, what we have had before us is an abutter issue with potential headlight wash, an applicant who has offered to pay him $1,000, and the abutter has complete discretion as to what to do with that $1,000. And I appreciate the applicant the abutter is concerned that whatever might be appropriate may or may not be covered by the $1,000. And I understand that the applicant is saying, basically, you know, I'm gonna offer some, I'm not gonna get involved in doing anything on somebody else's property, it'll be up to you to use the money. But let's also be clear that the applicant could also take the $1,000 and put it in the bank and decide that they can live with the headlight wash. I mean,
Well, that's why I'm suggesting we go to a landscape.
Well, that's between the two of you at this point. I'm not, we're not,
The applicant is not offering to do that. They are not willing to do that. And part of the difficulty, I think, for me on the board is it's not on the applicant's property, so it becomes a little more problematic to have an applicant required to do something in conjunction with somebody else's property.
so basically what we're saying is that there's gonna be a contribution made to you to address the screening, and it'll be up to you to spend the money the way you see it needs to be spent to provide the screening that's satisfactory to you, but it'd be a $1,000 amount.
I mean, the other option for the board is to say we approve it subject to a final dollar amount and let the abutter go out and get an estimate to put a berm up. But
That's gonna create more
right, I'm just
coming
saying.
back, so I'd like to resolve this tonight and be done with it personally. Peter?
He could take the $1,000 and wait until the place is put together, see if how much of a whitewash he's gotten, and says, hey, it's not bad, I'll put it in my pocket and walk away.
That's a risk that the applicant takes by making that offer.
I
And he's
agree,
nodding
so I
that
mean,
he
that's
agrees
really
with it.
it's really up to you to see if it's really a problem. If it isn't a problem, you just got $1,000.
Well, by standing opposite my house from where this driveway is, it comes right into those windows. And I know the other gentleman said something about ivy. Well, my house sits above ivy.
Okay, we accept that. So that's where we are with our condition. And we're gonna put that condition on the plan, and he'll be required to satisfy that with you before the plans are signed. And what you do with the money to buy screening is gonna be solely up to you. And do it yourself, hire a nursery company, it'll be your decision to do what you do with it. Or do nothing with it and wait and see. It'll be your decision.
Okay.
Thank you for coming up and down 3 times.
Thank you all.
Okay. All right, are we done with issues here? We have to vote on anything, Joanne?
There's one more thing that David had
Yes,
comments.
I would like to offer some comments on condition 17, which reads, add a note to the plan stating,
We still have to
it's
vote
on page circle 6, 17. Add a note to the plan stating the entire tree line along the proposed driveway shall remain in perpetuity. Okay, I consider the tree line shall remain in perpetuity unnecessarily harsh, particularly due to the word perpetuity. I believe the board should not be mandating the forever protection, possible replacement of some very mature trees that are 12 and 18 inches diameter. Obviously, at some point, those trees are going to die, and replacing them is very impractical. I've observed some trees that are growing very irregular. They're not attractive at all the way they've been cut. I've observed trees that are already dead, and does that constitute the tree line that has to be remaining? The area has been untended for many years. Consequently, there's a multitude of 1-inch diameter shrubbery or trees growing. Does that constitute the tree line that has to be maintained in perpetuity?
So what's your suggestion to do with 17?
My revision on 17 is add a note to the plan stating that the applicant's existing tree line, including the root system of those trees, immediately abutting the proposed driveways to the north, shall not be excessively disturbed during building the driveway or the building of the construction. And that excessively disturbed should be per the site of a professional arborist. That, I'm going to expand on this whole concept of a tree line, Mr. Chair, because the second issue I have in reading the plans, the proposed water line is between the driveway and the boundary line, and that trenching of the water line by itself is inadvertently going to, in my estimation, kill the entire tree line, because you're going to have a trench 4 feet from a trunk of 12 and 18-inch diameter trees, severing all those roots. My estimation, those trees are not going to remain healthy due to the trenching so close to the trunk. That also is going to increase the risk that those trees are going to fall to the north because they're weak on the south.
The only thing we have, Dave, to consider is that water and sewer have to be at 10-foot separation, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Mike?
So I would like to see condition 18. Add a note to the plan. Let's see, where am I now? What did I write here? What I wrote is condition 19, modify the plan to show the proposed water line on the south side of the driveway in order to reduce the risk of damaging the tree root system that is on the north.
But once again, you have water and sewer separation rules, and if the water line's on the south side of the driveway, you'd have to have 10-foot separation between the water and sewer.
So I'm just offering if.
I am just saying that's a requirement for your consideration. Dave, please.
There's opportunity to move the water line, and that's what I'm suggesting. It should be moved and not 4 feet from the trunks of very mature trees. If we're going to make an attempt to honor the request of the abutter to provide tree line protection between the abutter to the north.
Phil?
I have not been out here to the site. Are these trees pine trees?
No.
They're deciduous?
Yes. We can see on the plan, the abutter to the north has paved a driveway within 1 to 2 feet of the boundary line, and therefore he has by himself severely limited what he could put in for visual screening.
Which lot is that, Dave? What number?
14-12-1. No, I'm
12-2?
sorry. 14-12-2.
I don't see a driveway shown on my map.
Yes, yeah, there's a curved line. that
Oh, okay.
Goes in and goes to the right, and then it follows within 1 to 2 feet of the boundary line.
Okay. I didn't know that was a driveway line.
So
I guess so.
the applicant having no opportunity to put protective screening on along his driveway because he's effectively eliminated that opportunity. He's requested that the developer to his south keep the tree line, and so the conditions I've offered make an attempt to allow that tree line to remain, but it gives the applicant some opportunity to do professional cutting or removal if it's done under the advice of a professional arborist.
Board
Why-
member, go ahead, Barbara. Or was it Kim?
Yeah, why couldn't he do that currently under the condition that's already been written?
Which one is that, Karen?
The in perpetuity that
Well,
David was talking about.
for the reason he said, that the trees die.
Yeah, so
So
you
you,
replace them.
even an entire tree line remain in perpetuity. I don't know what that means. I mean, you have to keep those trees, or you just retain a tree screen?
Yeah, rescreen,
I would phrase it a
would be
little
my
differently.
interpretation.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a civil matter than a planning matter.
Well, no, we can require, and we do. We just did that in the last applicant. We put in landscaping as some berms. We just did it on,
Yeah.
you know, the medical building, so it's not unusual.
So I'm, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pick up on Jim's comment,
Well, it was-
and I'll suggest another condition the board might consider here, and add a note to the plan regarding the trees mentioned in condition 17, indicating that for a period of 5 years, following this plan approval, and only with the recommendation of a professional arborist, that trees of any diameter that are not healthy, and growing irregularly may be removed. Trees and other vegetative growth, say 3 inches in diameter or smaller, and they're not conducive to an attractive landscaping, and under the assessment of a professional arborist, they can be removed. I would like to give some, that's my offer for a different condition, but I would like to give some opportunity to the applicant to do proper landscaping in that tree line, and just not, that he can't touch it. He has to have the opportunity to do proper landscaping.
Couldn't we say something along the lines of that he'll maintain the tree line as it's currently set?
Well, that's the problem. Trees die, fall over.
Yeah, I know, but we could set a height parameter to it.
David's saying that once they go in and start trenching over there, they're gonna cut the root system and kill the trees. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
So-
sir.
Okay.
The whole driveway's gonna wind up being dug up, because you gotta put 2 pipes. You gotta put a sewer pipe and a water line, they gotta be 10 feet apart.
Okay, so,
And it's gotta go in there, plus you gotta dig it for the driveway.
okay.
And when that's all done, it's gonna destroy the roots. Why I asked if they were pines, because pines have shallow roots. Depends on the trees.
Maybe the applicant
Gonna do some
can
work to it.
come back to the table, and he could suggest how he would move the proposed sewer line, proposed water line, still maintaining the 10 feet, and yet have further distance from this tree line.
Board members, you want more to say before I entertain Dave's request?
Is the purpose of this condition to maintain those trees or to create a screen?
I think it's to create a screen.
And
I don't believe the applicant used the word screening.
Oh, I wasn't here.
And furthermore, in my observation, having visited the property, the mature trees that are 12 and 18 inches, they are providing a wonderful summertime shading of the abutter's house to the north.
But-
The summer sun is totally blocked out in his house. But, you know, the abutter who was here, he didn't mention screening, and he didn't mention sun shading.
we're getting into, say, the weeds, into the trees. The abutter paved to the edge of his driveway. He made a decision on screening, and I don't think it's up to this applicant.
The edge of his property line.
Yeah. It's up to this applicant to provide shading for the abutter if the abutter chose not to. It is fair to have a visual screening if that's appropriate because of the nature of the development. Although given the nature of this neighborhood, I question whether that should even be compelled. It's a dense neighborhood and driveways are not screened.
We could throw condition 17 out completely, and we don't have to even discuss 17, 18, and 19.
What if we simplified it and just said, within a 5-year period, there should be appropriate screening? I don't know.
What's appropriate screening? It's an undefined term.
Why 5 years?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. It just feels like we've ran into a whole bunch of conditions to get really super specific, and I'm not sure we need an arborist on this. I feel like that's super complicating things.
Well,
I guess I have less concern than others about screening if the applicant the abutter chose not to screen this property.
In the real world, he could go, in the real world, if they're on his land, he can go in there and cut them all down if he decides. But that's just the real world.
Wasn't part of the problem that he thought the trees were on his property?
I wasn't here for the first hearing. I don't know what the applicant at, the abutter at 1412-2.
Yeah, the property line goes right down the middle of all those trees, so.
Okay, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. See, I knew you were here for a reason. Oh, yeah, if you're gonna speak, you have to come up and give your name, otherwise you won't be entered anything into the record.
Sorry.
Public hearing has already been open and closed, so just state your name and that's all you really are allowed to do.
Kevin Mullen.
Thank you,
And,
Kevin.
yeah, I thought the property line goes right through the middle of the trees.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we know the trees are shared by both parties.
Could we just simplify it by saying, asking the applicant to do the minimal amount of disturbance to the trees as possible for construction?
That's a fair statement.
Well, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
If the trees all die after the work, is the applicant responsible for replacing the trees? Or is it a civil matter?
It's a civil matter because it's
I
on,
understand.
it's on a property line, it's not,
I think we're entitled to require retaining screening where it's appropriate.
I think we're over the limit, Jim, honestly, because we're gonna start telling people what they can do with their trees on their own land?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's my opinion. Barbara, please.
The applicant made a choice in regards to how he wanted to subdivide the property.
Right.
He chose to come off Field Street. It makes sense from a development standpoint because of the water and sewer access. It creates issues with abutters in what is known to be a tight neighborhood. And I missed the first hearing on this, apparently there were a bunch of us. But clearly there are issues when you put in a new lot in a dense neighborhood in regards to the impact on abutters. So the choice is made for development purposes as to coming off Hill Street for a couple of reasons, which I'm sure has to do with future development on 1411 along with the new lot. And we make applicants maintain things, put in things for abutters all the time. And I don't know, you know, my guess is the trenching, whether it's for the sewer line or the water line, probably isn't gonna make any difference, what's on what side. I don't have any idea, but my guess is you go in and pretty much dig up the whole thing. And so I think maintaining the tree line or of its equivalent is not an unreasonable position.
And
Whether it be a fence
I think
or
we simply say
trees.
that. We've got it. The tree line or equivalent.
I'd like to ask the applicant a question. Mike or Joe, either one. Is it possible to move the driveway south a little bit and not have it dead center? Shift the whole operation towards the lower property line, meet the 10-foot requirement, which would give you 30.7 more feet to come farther away from that tree line, and that would get you farther out of the root system.
Well, then he wouldn't need to string it over here.
See how easy that was.
Thought you never asked.
Well, that's where we are.
We have to show proposed water and sewer because it's a requirement.
Yeah.
But those are conceptual.
Right. So,
So
would you,
we can do that.
when we get a plan to sign, could it show the driveway being hitting the minimum distance of 10 feet on the southerly line, and then you still have room to put your sewer line in on the south side of the driveway, and you can put your water lane in the north side and still be another 4 feet away from the, for the driveway itself, you can even cheat the water line over a little more and get it closer to the edge of the driveway or something. Just to stay away from those trees is all I think that's what this whole discussion is all about.
No problem.
Boy, you're really reasonable all of a sudden.
You're still listening to us.
Good. Joe?
Can I ask, with that being said, what kind of language are we thinking about regarding the trees?
Well, that's what we're coming to. Now that
Okay.
we're thinking about
That
changing the
your
separation.
grandchildren will plant the successor trees.
It sounded like that maybe a minute ago, so I just was
I
curious.
see our town engineer would like to be recognized. Scott, come up to the table, please.
This is gonna change the conditional use permit they requested earlier tonight a little, where they're going to be moving closer to that other driveway, so now they're gonna be less than the 40 feet by even more, so they'll be more like.
To which driveway, Scott?
To the church, I don't have my plans in front of me,
Be like
the
36 feet.
parent.
To the
Instead of
parent lot
39,
driveway?
So
it'll be
I just want you to know that.
That'll change the conditional use
It'll
permit.
change the, a
Thank you
little
for that
bit, but it's
information.
still,
Thank you.
it's basically the same situation on the other side, with a little closer. Just wanted you to have all the info.
Board members,
Joe had a question.
Phil,
No, Joe, sorry.
Joe.
Joe.
Joe's back.
Shoot, I can't probably do that. Could you ask the abutter if screening in fact is their concern?
They're not
We're
here.
back to
Oh,
screen.
yes, he is, never mind. I forgot.
I thought this was all debated at the last meeting.
No, it was just brought up, it wasn't.
Just brought up?
Well, if we move, then there's.
Yeah, I guess we can ask them what he recommends. It's his concern.
The reason why I say that is anytime you start saying something like you'll maintain the tree line for
Yeah.
5 years, what
I
just
agree.
gets to be really tough. I would rather give the abutter the same money that I'm giving to the gentleman across the street so they could plant some little stuff on their side and build their own little screen. But whether I have to cut one tree or the fire department wants one branch trimmed, whether it's an arborist, it just sounds very muddy. If screening in fact is the purpose, I would rather make a donation to the abutter for the same amount I made to the gentleman across the street so that they could start a low hedge that will grow large or whatever it is that they'd like to do.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Do we need that if we're moving the driveway?
The question now is it a screening issue or is it a maintain the mature tree issue? We don't have that answer at this point.
Right.
Because the big trees don't provide screening. The big trees provide shade.
Right.
The underbrush provides screening.
But I guess, well, the concern that David had is with the
Trenching.
with the trenching, but that'll be negated by moving the driveway closer and.
Well,
Well, it'll be mitigated.
Mitigated.
It won't be.
I don't think we should move the driveway because that's going to increase the nonconformity for the conditional use permit. We'll have to redo that because the number is going to change, as
You
the
can
engineer
slide the
said.
We haven't
water
voted on it
line,
yet anyway.
I know we have.
Sewer line south. Leave the driveway where it is.
Yes.
Slide it, whatever. Honestly,
I'm going to make a motion that the applicant move the
Water line.
water line of the closest utility line at least, I don't know what the distance is, 6 feet away from the tree line, and that appropriate screening or vegetation be maintained between the two lots.
Could we change that language to the language that Barbara had earlier about the tree line or level line?
Well, that's why, appropriate screening is, if they want to work out something else, they can. But I don't want to be micromanaging vegetation. We have to say what's the goal, what's the reasonable accommodation. And if it's a tree that straddles the lot, Joe can't cut down half a tree, so he's got a problem. And when the trees die, they got to put up some other screening, and if they can reach some other agreement, great, we're out of here. This isn't a site plan, so we don't have the ability to monitor it as to what actually happened.
These are conceptual proposed locations. These are not cut in stone.
Yeah. And we heard an offer by the applicant. I think it's reasonable. So I think we go with it. So we make that motion that we, the sewer line and water line be moved at least, I'm calling it kind of 6 feet away from the trees, and that the driveway be adjusted as necessary, and that the tree line or other appropriate screening be maintained.
Do you want to do this in conjunction with the?
And then I'm going to move that we allow the applicant to amend the conditional use permit to permit a distance that's accommodates the moved driveway because it does not change materially our consideration of the conditional use permit since the applicant owns lot 14-11, which is the lot most affected by moving it.
So Jim has made a motion.
He's actually just made two.
I just made two.
I'll second.
So is that one
Well, it's
continuous
two.
motion
No,
or two
it's-
independent
it's-
motions?
It's two because we're amending the conditional use approval.
Well, first of all, we haven't even voted on the conditional use permit
I
yet.
know, that's why I'm making a motion before we get there.
Okay.
If I could suggest that Jim's second motion be addressed first to amend the conditional use permit, then we can vote on the conditional use permit. And then when we go to vote on the plan, Gail has already got Jim's first motion, which then would be an amendment to the condition for approval after the conditional use.
So Jim has made a motion to amend the conditional use permit to accommodate the driveway changes as necessary, Jim, is that right?
Yes.
And that distance will be determined,
By the location of the driveway as adjusted to accommodate the tree line. Or the
so it can be
vegetation.
whatever they need it to be.
Correct. Because they still have to meet the sideline setbacks from the lot line, so we still.
So it could only move 3.7 feet
That's
technically.
right, yeah. So, it's just immaterial.
Jim, question, Jim, does your motion cross out staff recommended number 7?
Yes, it's in place of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Accommodate. Jim, I think Gail would like you to restate it so she can get it all.
Barbara?
I think Jim made a motion to amend the applicant's conditional use permit to accommodate for the distance revision that will be necessary to afford a move in the driveway, which should leave meet the setback requirement for the north side, right?
Yeah, it's still
We're
meeting.
moving it towards the north, right?
No.
To the
South.
south.
To the south. We're
Shifting
moving
it to the south.
And that this is reasonable considering that the applicant is the owner of the lot for which we need the conditional use permit for.
We could ask them to do the math on it, and you could put a number on it if you want.
I don't think it
We don't
would
think we need
matter.
Okay. Fine with me.
And I agree with my motion as amended.
So who,
I
so
will
Jim?
continue
Make
to
it
second
Barbara's motion, I'll second, oh, no.
Did you
Kimberly
second that,
seconded.
Kimberly?
I did.
Kimberly seconded.
Okay, so there's a motion to adjust the driveway location to accommodate a new driveway location based on the conditional use permit necessary to move the water and sewer lines away from the tree line that's in question. Does that sound right?
We're amending, this is for the conditional use permit, that's all we're doing now, that's the first, we're acting
Okay,
on that
so
first.
all those in favor of Jim's motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, everybody votes for it. So now are you gonna,
Okay, I'm going to move that we amend or replace number 17 with the requirement that the existing trees or other appropriate screening be maintained between lot 14-12-2 and the, what I'll call the driveway extension portion of lot 14-11.
On the northerly border.
14.12.2 and the driveway extension portion of the northern border of the driveway extension portion of lot 14-11-2.
so it's been motioned by Jim,
I'll second.
seconded by Kimberly.
So we'll be approving conditions from the.
We're not approving conditions,
sorry.
we're eliminating
Sorry.
17 and replacing it.
Gotcha.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Could I hear 17 again, please, sorry?
Add a note to the plan stating the entire tree line along the proposed driveway for 14-11 shall remain in perpetuity.
That's what's there now, and we're replacing that.
No, I want it,
Replacing.
what did,
That the existing trees or other appropriate screening be maintained,
It's
What
what she
you
asked,
seconded?
but yeah. Yeah.
which is vague, I know, but I'm not.
Here's what I wrote down.
Yeah, I've got that. I just wanted to know if it was this 17, that
This
17, or a different 17.
That's a proposed 17.
Yeah, that's
That's not in
the,
the-
I need that back though,
That's not in the record.
not yet, because we still got 18 and 19.
All right, so the
That's
motion,
that's just on that one. I want to address some of the others.
so that motion has been made to replace 17 with another condition.
And
All right.
it's been seconded.
It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed.
You can exhaust everybody. And I've got other,
You got that?
What-
I was opposed.
I have questions on these other,
Before we do them, Jim, we should vote on the conditional use permit, no?
I thought we did.
No,
No, we've never
Oh,
voted on
amended,
it.
we
no?
just voted to amend the applicants.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Now we need a motion to approve the amended conditional use permit
Okay,
for the,
I move that based on the applicant's representations contained in its June 8 letter, we make the findings outlined on Joanne's report, which we can incorporate on page 4, and that we grant the conditional use permit as amended.
Motion by Jim, seconded by
second.
Go ahead.
Barbara, was that you?
Yep.
Motion by, seconded by Barbara. Anybody want to discuss the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay, may I go through some of these other comments? David
Please.
Mailer? Number 8, what is 8? Add a note that an intent to cut has been properly filed or is not required? Is that just a statement in the,
That's a standard.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
part of our regulations.
Okay. In building permit required, is that building permit for any, because we already have that it does not exempt the applicant on number 4. Isn't 13 redundant?
It is based
Yes.
on number 4.
So I would suggest we take out 13. And then the note suggested conditions is at the number 14. What are you asking?
Shall be corrected.
Okay, well, shall we make that statement?
Shall be corrected?
Yeah, because, put a note on the plan.
It's incorrect. This is incorrect.
Okay, and with those changes, unless David has others, I didn't.
No, my 3 concerns were addressed in various motions.
Okay, with those changes, then I move that we approve this.
Well, we have to add the condition where the applicant has agreed to
Yeah.
provide
Yes.
funding to either or both neighbors in the
No,
amount
no,
of...
it's- no,
No,
it's
just
Across the street.
it-
for.
Just the one across the street?
Yeah.
64?
With the owner of lot 14-64 for $1,000 for the.
For the purpose of...
Screening.
Screening.
That owner's construction of appropriate screening.
So that's number...
18, or 17,
No.
7.
We'll put it
Well,
as
no,
18, and
you
she can
took out
renumber them later.
13, so
Be-
somebody who can count can,
Oh,
Want
you
to put
took
that
out-
in as 13 then?
So,
I don't care.
We'll place 13 with that one, so that way it'll stay at
18B5.
16.
Okay. With that, those amendments, I move that we approve and get these guys out.
So I don't think that we needed the 2 at the end that were David's, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
I'll second it.
So Jim's made a motion to approve with the changes and the conditions, and Karen has seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Can we tell Joe not to darken our door for at least another month? I guess we can't.
I think he's here next time, too. Yes, he is.
Thank you.
But we should thank the abutters for their comments. They were very useful.
Well, let the record reflect that Jim is thanking you about it.
So reflective.
Appreciate their coming and being a few words, but significant in comments.
Do you have any other business from board members or staff? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Bill has made his annual motion to adjourn.
The
Bi-weekly,
well- the
bi-monthly?
well-attired Phil, let the minute show, in his summer outfit.
Motion to adjourn in summer outfit.
And it is officially summer, you know.
Yes, it is.
Okay, Phil, and who seconded it?
Kimberly.
Kimberly. All those in favor of motion to adjourn in the summer outfit, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Summer outfit.
In December.
I don't know, I had,
So you can reach it.